Took a while for me to unmute there. Hello and welcome back to another episode of From the Field. I'm your host, Casey. You're based in Wellington, New Zealand. And today we're going to talk about the hot topic, which is AI, but delivered in a very different way. Explained the concepts and ideas are broken down into very simple ways that even I understood. And if I can understand it, then pretty much the whole entire world can. So I'm looking forward to Natalia to gracing us with her knowledge. But the one thing I can say is that I don't need AI to tell me that you should mow your lawns more often, because I forgot for the last couple months and it has been spring over here. So it got to about that deep, and mowing that lawn took me like 2 hours. So
Ooh.
don't do that. Do not make that mistake. And I will ask you to introduce yourself, Natalia, and then also ask the standard icebreaking questions that we have, which is what was your first programming language and what was the first major project you worked on?
Cool. Hi, Casey. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalia, and I'm a solution architect here at AWS, but actually based in Auckland. So it's much better than Wellington. Yeah.
No.
Cool. So first programming language, it was C, like pure C, back at uni. And first major project I was working in, I made a network design for local internet service provider, connecting few suburbs together. So pretty much network equipment, fiber cables, location of equipment, location of the cables, that sort of stuff. That was quite a big thing for me.
It's, I think, a lot more networking than most people do. I think most people just do networking around their house or their office. Yet there's you like just doing it at the city scale.
Yeah, teeny tiny city, but still.
That's
cool.
better than what I've done. So do you also want to go over in your own words what are we going to cover in today's session? What the viewers have to look forward to. And why I say that, also feel free to ask any questions of to Natalia and myself, and we'll do our best to ask them. And also, hello, Masianda from Nigeria. Oh shit, that's awesome. Never had anyone from Nigeria watching the show before, so welcome. And I hope you find this interesting. And yeah, so if you can explain what the viewers have to store for them, and why are you talking about this topic?
Cool. So today we're going to talk about architecture pattern with Bedrock and RAG, which is Retrieval-augmented generation for Q&A solution. So I'm going to kind of explain parts of what's involved in this architecture and also how it all connects to each other. So why I'm talking about that particular topic is quite interesting because, as I mentioned before, I was a fiber network designer in my previous job, and quite often we have a lot of different documentation which was proprietary data, so you cannot go and search on Google. And if I wanted to find, like, I would see something in a document, and later on when I need to find it, it was like a nightmare, try to remember where exactly was it. That would be so nice to go and ask the system to kind of answer, like, what do I need to do here, which can provide me some kind of links to documents and some background why it kind of gives me that answer. So I found it's very fascinating that with technology nowadays, it's actually possible. I wish it was possible 10 years ago.
Awesome. And Tudorf, hello to you too. And I see you have a Rick and Morty like avatar there, which is, everyone loves a good old Rick and Morty. If you haven't, and I don't know if anyone outside of New Zealand knows this, but there's that Pickle Rick type episode, and I'm sure a lot of you know what I'm talking about, and others are just looking at me very, very confused. But there is a brewery in New Zealand called Garage Project, and they brew a pickle-based beer that is actually based on that whole entire meme of Pickle Rick. And it tastes just as you expect. It's very weird. It's kind of like having a pickle juice in a beer. It definitely is polarizing, and it is 10 past noon right now in New Zealand. So it must be, if my maths is correct, either very early morning for you or evening. So- And okay, Natalia, do you want to get into it while we wait for
Yep.
oh, and we got a Mongolia? Oh, awesome. I think that's the first time from Mongolia as well. So excited. Oh, actually, Cloud 101, I believe I saw you last week. So nice to see you again, if my memory serves me right. There you go, Natalia. Sorry, got derailed by the amazing viewers.
Yep, sure. So I can continue on?
Yep, go for it.
Yes, cool, awesome. So yeah, obviously, as I mentioned, Q&A solution, it's very important when you answer the question, then you can get, so when you ask a question, sorry, my English is not very well. When you ask a question, the answer need to be factual, need to be correct, and it's nice to have it's based on some kind of knowledge. And with large language models, they've been trained on a large amount of data. And when they answer the question, they actually provide probability of what the word would be the next in that sentence. So if they never seen the particular domain or weren't trained on particular data, they cannot answer. They can generate an answer, but it wouldn't be very specific. So with the pattern I'm going to show you today, which is you can see on your screen, we can augment the model, foundational model, GenAI model, with the information of specific domain or information which is proprietary data, like a business data or company data, and ask a question to the model with providing your own data as a context to get factual answer to the question. So as you can see on this architecture diagram, the solution is kind of separated into two parts. The top part is actually where you ask a question to GenAI model, foundational model, and the bottom part is where that RAG, retrieval-augmented generation, is kind of kicking, and where you provide in the context for the model to answer your question. So let's start through these numbers. So as you can see, around number one is to be able to provide the context to the model, you need to have some kind of, say, knowledge base, some amount of your data stored in a way where you can get some insights out of it. And in this particular example, we use vector database as our knowledge base. So to be able to store your documents, store your text information in the vector database, you would need to use another type of foundational model, which called embedding model, which convert text into the vectors, which is array of numbers, to store it in a knowledge base. So once you process all your information stored in knowledge base, when user comes and asks a question, that question being diverted to your knowledge base to find the context on your knowledge base for that question. But to be able to do so, you would need to convert your question into vector as well, into array of number. And you would need to use embedding model as well. It's very important here that you use exactly the same embedding model for your embedding of your data and embedding on your question, because different embedding models operate in different vector space, so it wouldn't make any sense to use different one. And the vector model, vector database, knowledge base will return the documents or chunks of documents which is most relevant to the question, and it will retrieve the original text of the document, and together with the question, you send this context to your large language model, which would generate the answer for you. So where the Bedrock comes to the picture is actually a managed service. It's where you have access to multiple models from leading providers, and you don't need to worry about anything. You just make an API call to Bedrock, specify a particular model you want to use, and it does all the heavy lifting for you, creation of endpoint, managing of infrastructure. It's all done by a Bedrock, so you don't need to worry about that. And that's where this solution kind of become much more easier than previously, before Bedrock was available, because you still were able to do it, but you would have to create your own endpoints, and if you want to use different model, you would have to create different endpoints and communicate to them in a different way. Does it make sense, Casey?
Yes, and we do have a few things that popped in. Nippon said AWS streams. Yes, we do. We've been streaming for probably about 3 years now. We have numerous different shows. Beforehand, we had Howdy Partner, what focuses on AWS partners and their solutions like ISVs and everything like that. They are awesome. And I do agree that Mario's 64 speedruns are awesome. I watched a lot of them in my time. We do have one question, which is, do we have a proof of concept that customers can use for RAG, like a solution or a blog or a workshop, Natalia?
We do have a solution. I'll show it later today, and I'll show the link to that solution. So it's actually a solution available on AWS Supple's GitHub account, but I will show it later today. Cool.
Awesome. And there's one more.
Yep.
Question from Tudorf, which is, so could you import existing use cases in the database to have it ready to go? Does it need a specific framework / file type?
Can you repeat it a bit slowly for me, please?
I talk way too quickly. Apologies, she only has one screen. So could you import existing use cases in the database to have it ready to go? Does it need a specific framework / file type? I'm assuming this is in context of the knowledge base.
So it depends. I will talk about what sort of, like, we have a solution with use different stores for RAG. Like, for example, we use OpenSearch, Amazon Aurora with pgvector and Kendra. So, for example, if you already use Kendra as your knowledge base, you can continue use Kendra and still kind of achieve the same outcome with the similar way of doing the pattern. But to answer that very definite that question, I probably would need to have a more context what exactly customer is trying to do.
So Tudorf, if you want to just add more context, if you want a more specific answer than that, then go ahead and I'll jump in when Natalia next has a break. Over to you, Natalia.
Cool. So just to talk a little bit about embeddings and how it all works. So obviously, machine does not understand text. It operates much better with numbers. So natural language processing was and still is quite a complex subject. So when we're talking about embedding models, what they can do, that they can convert the text into array of numbers, also known as vectors, and you can store them in a vector store. So the embedding models convert the text into vector, and they keep the semantic meaning of the word or of the sentence. So this one is kind of showing three-dimensional space where each number is your embedding, but obviously the embedding model operated much many more dimensions. There are things you need to consider when you do embeddings yourself is what sort of questions this solution is going to get, because it would decide what sort of how to embed your documents. Because obviously large language model have limitations, so obviously they have context window. Some more than one have quite a large context window of 100,000 tokens, but not all models support that. And also what sort of question, like how much information, how much context you need to provide when you answering the question. Can it be, does it have to be whole document, or can it be just part of the document? Or do you need to provide multiple documents to be able to answer the question correctly? So I just want to kind of show you a demo of like how embeddings work and how vector works, and how campaign of vector works, because I found it very fascinating, to be honest. So we have, as I mentioned, we have a solution on our AWS samples GitHub account, which everybody can go and deploy in their own environment. It's an open solution which provides a GenAI chatbot. It has retrieval-augmented generation capabilities. And here also you can, when you deploy that solution, you can deploy additional models, which is not available on Bedrock. So for example, there are few embedding models available in this solution. Obviously Titan in a Bedrock, but also there are a couple more in SageMaker. So if I select a few models just to kind of show the comparison, I already pre-populated inputs here, and this is just to compare the embeddings and how it all works, to kind of show it in more visual form than just kind of explanation. I have a couple of sentences. For example, can you please tell me how to get to the bakery? I need direction to the bread shop. Can you please tell me the way to hospital? And then the sentence 4 and 5, quite funny. Cat, dogs, and mice, and feline, canine, and rodents. As you can see, first 3 sentences are kind of related. Actually, first 2 sentences are pretty much asking for the same thing in a different words, where sentence 3 is still related because I'm asking for direction, but in a completely different place, while last 2 are very separate from first 2, but it's actually synonyms. And if we generate embeddings for them, we would be able to see, hopefully it works.
Dun, dun, dun.
So yeah, you will be able to see the comparison of embeddings of each sentence. So pretty much, as you can see, for sentence 1 embedding, if you compare, it's exactly the same. Obviously, there are a few ways mathematically to compare vectors. But here, for example, obviously, because sentence 1, it's exactly same dot for sentence 1, so in comparison gives you 1. But sentence 2 is very, very close to sentence 1 in here, while sentence 4 and 5 are far away. So it kind of shows you the number of comparison of vector with different algorithms, but also it kind of gives you visual the color output to kind of indicate which numbers are closer to each other, which numbers are far apart. And for example, for sentence 4 and 5, because it was actually synonyms, it still shows them quite close. So for example, in this case, if you have a system and you send your first sentence to the system and asking it to retrieve other sentences, which like the other sentence which is closest to the sentence you send to, for sentence 1, it would retrieve sentence 2. And for sentence 4 or 5, for sentence 4, it will retrieve sentence 5. And this is, I found this very fascinating because originally when I started reading about it, I was like, how does it work? Like, and this actually helped me to understand. But as I mentioned, you would have to use exactly the same embedding models, and there are few options available on the market. You would need to see which model work for your data and whatever you're storing, because as you can see here, Titan embedding model works pretty well for these particular sentences. And the last model on SageMaker, again, working pretty well. But one of the model kind of doesn't really differentiate that much. Still differentiate the sentences, but not too much. And I think it's very important to kind of just highlight that aspect of RAG and vector data store solution.
So this is a really good visual way to understand if the model you're using is appropriate for the type of questions you're asking a data set.
Yeah, so if you want to use particular embedding model for your particular specific example, your particular domain, or your particular data, that would be a way to kind of you would need to experiment to see what works, what doesn't work.
And Tudorf has said, so it's a mapping to the questions that are closer to each other depending on model visually. So yeah, pretty much what I said.
Yep. So if you go back, so that solution I just show which is available on GitHub. I will provide the link in the end of the slide deck. This is an architecture diagram of solution which can be deployed in your own environment. So we do have free RAG engines options in that particular solution. Amazon OpenSearch is where you would use all these embeddings, sort of, and vectorization to be able to retrieve your documents. But also, you have an option of Amazon Aurora for PostgreSQL. You have pgvector, and quite a few customers have Kendra already available for them, and they have data and they can search, like provide intelligent search with Kendra. So Kendra actually been updated, and it can provide these chunks of its document to large language models. So you can use Kendra as your RAG engine as well. Obviously, you would need to choose which one is better for you. And I don't think there is like a right or wrong way. I would say if you already have your data in Kendra, try it with Kendra. If majority of your data is in database, and especially it's Postgre database, and you can just, play with pgvector, try it first because you already know the technology and your data already there. If you're already familiar with OpenSearch, try OpenSearch. There are no right or wrong answer. So let's jump back to that solution. So once you deploy the solution, obviously it has all the security because for AWS it's very important, the security of solution. So it's actually create, as you can see over here, it's create a cognito where before you kind of log in into the chatbot, you have to create a user to make sure that you can securely log in into the solution. And once you log into the solution, you would need to create workspace to store your data. So there are 3 options, pgvector, Amazon OpenSearch, and Amazon Kendra. And for Amazon OpenSearch, for example, there are some additional settings. As I mentioned before, when you embed your documents, you would need to consider how you're going to use them. So here you will have to select chunk size and chunk overlap. So pretty much you divide your documents into pieces, but the pieces need to be overlapped to make sure that the context of that piece is kind of continuous on. I already created a couple of workspaces here, one for Kendra and one for OpenSearch. And I only put one particular document here. It's from New Zealand Transport Agency about how to renew your driver license.
Oh, that actually reminds me. I need to do that. Oh, God. I'm actually being serious. My driver's license expires in like 2 weeks. Okay, I'll add that to my list of things to do. That's helpful.
Cool. So just to kind of show you how it actually operates, like when you ask a question without any document provided, the chatbot usually is able to answer your question anyway, unless it's a very specific question. Sometimes chatbots will, or large language model would reply with, sorry, I don't have enough context, or I don't have that information. But I know in this document there are some mention of medical certificate. So let's ask a question. When do I need to provide medical certificate? This is quite a generic question, so I would imagine the model will be able to answer my question, but I don't think it will be able to give me quite a useful information for my context, because I don't provide any context to the model. So in this particular case, the model actually says, I'm afraid it doesn't have enough context. So now if we add one of these workspaces and ask exactly the same question to the model, it should be able to answer the question based on the document provided. And as you can see, it gives me quite a specific answer while I didn't ask any specific question, just because the context was provided from my knowledge base. Here in this solution, you can turn on metadata. So you would be able to see what sort of metadata was sent, or what sort of chunks of documents were sent to the large language model together with your questions. Like if you remember the first diagram where I said the question being embedded to send to vector database to find the most relevant piece of information that vector database. So as you can see here, you have the 3 pieces of context which been sent, and you will be able to search like where it's taken that information directly from. But also in your own solution, when you implement something like that, you will be able to return that information. Like for example, it even provides a file, so you can actually reference where these factual facts been taken from, which is very helpful, because sometimes you just ask a model to provide information and you cannot really see how it come up with to particular conclusion, because that large language model, it is like a black box for you now. Obviously, there are other ways to, like RAG is one of the way to augment large language model with your data. there is another way, for example, fine-tuning the model, where you can use your own data to augment the model. So there are some advantages and disadvantages for each approach, and that you would probably need to decide what would be most important for you. But for fine-tuning, what I think you need to consider is when you fine-tune a model, obviously it can be quite an expensive exercise and it can take some time to fine-tune the model. But fine-tune the model will be frozen at the time of fine-tuning. And nowadays the information arrives and changes so quickly. Like you might have documents like new instructions every month or every week or every day. And fine-tuning doesn't give you that flexibility of adding new information, or you would have to retrain or fine-tune the model again and again and again. Also, another advantage of using RAG as an augmented large language model is with this solution, you can, because you obviously customer have to log in into the solution, so you can say who has access to which document. With fine-tuning model, whoever have access to that fine-tuning model would have access to all information stored in all documents, while with RAG solution, you actually can kind of say, okay, these people should have access to this data, so they will be able to search data and ask questions about that data, but it's not, that data is not available to everyone.
So you're saying that I can't engineer prompt my way around the security and ask for everyone's data?
So that sounds more like hacking. So I don't know if you're a good hacker, you might be able to do it, but what I'm saying here that you have a level of control where if you fine-tune the model absorbs all the information, and you cannot say, okay, now model, you only give this piece of information to particular people, because model cannot differentiate who is asking a question. Cool. So we actually have a couple of customers who implemented a retrieval-augmented generation for their systems, and we have a couple of blogs at AWS Machine Learning blog website, which I will provide links at the end of the presentation. And while they didn't use Bedrock, because Bedrock went general availability only 2-3 weeks ago, but you can see how other customers kind of start using retrieval-augmented generation to be able to search through their data and use Gen AI with their own data.
And what I see also is a lot of people asking about use cases for Gen AI and how other people have applied it. And that's where those blogs and use cases actually come in handy, is when you are trying to figure out, where is the advantage, what's the upside to your business, what competitive advantages give, what niceties does it give your customers or your internal stakeholders, etc., etc. That's I end up reading a lot of those type of blogs just so I can start understanding that background. And during a lot of time, background is more important than knowing how to actually implement something.
Yep,
because you're going to learn how to implement it, but if you don't know about it, then there's no way you can implement it.
Yep. So there are obviously quite a few considerations when you do Gen AI solution with RAG. So one of the consideration is which model you're going to use and what's the limit of a context you can provide to the model. Because obviously, while Claude V2 from Anthropic can handle up to 100,000 tokens, not every model can do it. And the thing here is you don't always need the biggest and largest to do what you're trying to do. And you can experiment with different models and see what's working for you, because obviously smaller models can still provide satisfactory results, but will be more cost-effective solution. So just to kind of highlight here, when you embed in your documents, you need to consider which sort of models you're going to work with. If you're going to go with very, very large model with large context, you probably can provide larger chunks, but it would limit you with ability to work with smaller models.
One question there. Do you mention
Yep.
or have a unit of tokens there? What is a token?
So the token is how the model processes information. So it's pretty much amount of context model can handle. And I can go back to, does it show me the amount of tokens here? No, it doesn't. But in Bedrock, you can go and have a look to see when you talk to the model, like you can send the logs to the CloudWatch, and you can see how many tokens been used for particular query, because again, this is how the model will be priced, like how many tokens it's processed. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to mention is about another thing for a consideration. There was a recent research paper which actually found out that the more document you retrieve and provide to your large language model, it's actually decreasing the performance of the model on answering the question. And I found this very funny because if you think about a document as a human, you usually concentrate on what's like, you cannot get all information in. So the things you usually remember is what's been in the beginning. And here is as well, if you give a little bit of information, it would be good. The model would be retrieved, will be answer good with the documents which were retrieved in the beginning. But the middle section would be like a dip, and then you will have a little bit of lift in the end. So I found it's very fascinating that while models are not really have an understanding, they actually kind of just predict the next word, but they still behave quite similar to humans, I would say. But yeah, this is quite a recent study, but probably something need to be considered, like how many documents you want to retrieve and feedback to the model as part of context to make sure that it still performs very well and answering your question correctly.
Actually, there's a good question that came in that will be good for you to explain. I was actually going to write a massive answer right now. It's like, actually, might as get you to. So Bedrock is a new AWS service that uses built-in ML models as instead of running it on custom ECS, for example.
So Bedrock is a new service which provides you access to multiple foundational models from leading providers. So there are some models from AWS, like Titan models, but also there are models from Anthropic, A21 Labs, etc. Actually, we can go and have a look which models are available here, because that's a list of models. So we have a model from Cohere. And this service will allow you just to talk to this model via API call. So you don't need to worry about, is it EC2 or ECS or SageMaker endpoint behind the scenes, which kind of powers that model, because obviously you need compute for that model to operate. And it takes a lot of heavy lifting from you, because it's managed service. You don't need to worry about anything apart from you go to the Bedrock, you enable particular models you want to talk to, and that's how you have your endpoint, and we have documentation about because you need to specify the model as well as you need to provide some parameters for that model, because obviously different models have different parameters expecting as an income, but you specify this as an API call, and you don't need to worry about, don't need to do any patching. Is my instances big enough to support that model? So that type of heavy lifting is taken away from you.
Yeah, I would actually
Does it
say
make
that,
sense to you?
yep, the Bedrock marketing page is probably one of the best pages that I've seen. I'm not gonna expand beyond that, but yeah, it answers a lot of those real basis questions because it's not expecting you to understand AI, so it goes into a lot of the the details around it. So it is a very good starting resource if you are wanting to understand what Bedrock is and where it sits within the wider ecosystem, since a lot of people know and have interacted with Open AI, for example.
Cool. So this is a links to first one is for that GitHub solution, and the second two are for the blog post I mentioned. And yeah, that's pretty much what I want to cover today. And hopefully, it's quite interesting. When I was originally learning about the subject, it was so confusing, and it took me a while to understand. But now I'm trying to explain it to somebody. Sometimes I'm struggling to find a way to explain things which were confusing me before, because now I was like, oh yeah, it makes sense to me now. So I hope it makes sense to you too.
Actually, do you have Bedrock enabled in your account or anything like that, or is that going to be too much of a setup? Because we have about 15 minutes, so I
Yes,
was wondering
I
if you
do.
if you can just quickly show them what Bedrock, like interacting with Bedrock actually is, because I think that the console has a good test harness.
Yep.
So yes, so Bedrock is specifically for a managed service around large language models or foundational models. SageMaker, you can interact with them as well, but SageMaker is generally catered towards your data scientist, where Bedrock is much more as a higher level consumption of AI service.
So, yep, I'm going to guess, yeah. So this is the Bedrock AWS console. So at the moment, it is available in North Virginia and Oregon. I think we are planning to expand it to other regions, but these two US regions actually have majority of the models available in them, while the other regions still don't have all of the models. So first thing you need to go when you go there is it's pretty much a list of the models available right now on the Bedrock. And originally you don't have access, so you would need to go and click edit button and tick which model you want to interact with, and then save changes. So, for example, if for whatever reason you don't want stability eye diffusion model because, for example, you're not going to play with images, you can save the changes, and this would remove access. To that model. So even, okay. I did not know that. Yeah, so originally you can select which model you want to use. I can probably go to another account and see if I have an account where I didn't enable the model, so kind of show what it looks like to begin with. Let me try that.
So just to answer Jake from your question, so there is some material that we have around compliance. Obviously, that is a big topic with anything around AI because you have to be able to understand what it's doing and be able to obviously report on that. So there's a couple pages directly to Bedrock. I don't like, and we do have a list of HIPAA compliance services. And from a quick overview of it, I can't see it, but that might also be because it's going through that process. Obviously, I'm not privy to that level of information. But yeah, so just go if you have a quick look at our HIPAA compliance services, because there's a list of them. I know there's a list somewhere in our documentation. You'll be able to answer that question there. Oh, no, apparently Fisherman Gabriel has beat me to the punch, and it's HIPAA eligible. Ah, that's cool. I didn't know that. Thank you for educating me. This just goes to show that it's such a large beast, you can't know everything.
Yeah, definitely. And this is how the Bedrock console looks like for you when you log in first time. So none of the model would be enabled. You can see that they are available, or some of them are not available. This one is still in preview, and I don't have an access to it. But you can just edit and select which one. You can select one, or you can select many, just to enable, then save changes. And that would grant access. So for example, if you don't want to have access to all the models, you can only enable models you are interested in. And then you have the playground where you can interact with a model. Obviously, you need to select a model. So if you enable more than one model, you will have a list here because I only enable one model. It has two versions of that particular model, but yeah, you just can kind of interact with the model. You can add instruction as well. It will be part of the prompt, and then ask particular question to the model. I don't even have a good question to ask that model particular. We can try the same one. What color is the sky? Okay. What color sky?
Which is technically a trick question.
I have no idea what's going to give us back. Yeah, so yeah, model usually can provide like an answer quite good with general knowledge because it's been trained on vast amount of data. But it actually doesn't understand what it's saying. It just knows a pattern and know what word should follow. And that's why sometimes model can generate something completely random. They call it a hallucination. So RAG technique actually helps with reducing the hallucination because hallucination is usually not what people want. Then they need some kind of answers to the question. It might be quite expressive, and if you try to generate like a random story, that's where you probably want some kind of creativity. But if you ask a specific question, you probably don't want that creativity. And the RAG technique will help with kind of bringing that possibility of hallucination down.
So the chess warrior actually made a nice little quip at it, saying you can ask it why the Bedrock service was named Bedrock, which I can hazard a guess at why it's called Bedrock.
Okay, let's try. Why Bedrock service?
You probably want to say why the AWS Bedrock service.
Why?
Why the AWS Bedrock service?
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, I won't have any idea like what we're on about. I'll be like, Bedrock is Bedrock.
Okay.
This is science right
Um,
here. You're watching it live.
okay, let's see. So as you can see, this the text appears not in one chunk, just because streaming is enabled. Not every model supports streaming, but some model which supports streaming, it can be quite handy because it takes time for model to generate a large answer, and if you put it into your solution, and it's like from customer point of view, customer experience, it's much nicer to start getting answer like all the way instead of waiting for a period of time and then get a whole big of chunk of text. So
It also is quite interesting where a lot of like I think pretty much all of these answers because I have to look at my other screen because I can't read the tiny one in front of me.
okay,
Just old age right there. It's none of these answers are actually really. I guess the first answer is like the most correct. But I think Flintstones, like as Tudorf was saying, Flintstones has to be the reason. It's a reference to the Flintstones. There you go. We you heard it here first.
so again, the model doesn't know, doesn't understand. The question is, I would imagine that would be proprietary data why the Bedrock called Bedrock in AWS. So even model, if the model was trained after the fact that it was publicly announced that we have this service, I don't think the Anthropic have access to the information of why. So model just generate sentences and predict what would be the next word which should go in that sentence. So model doesn't know, doesn't have an understanding. And because it actually kind of, when you interact with model, it sometimes feel like it understands you. You just need to make sure that you're aware that even while it can produce very kind of human-like outputs, it still doesn't have that human understanding of conversation. I don't know if I can explain it correctly, but I just want to make sure that people don't think, okay, model knows everything and understands my question. Does not. It just it knows the structure of the language very well, and it has a statistically like what word would be next in that sentence sort of output.
Yeah, definitely. The key ones there is when I was interacting around with like security, which is obviously a very nuanced like ecosystem. Yeah, you had to lead it and be very direct, saying, no, I'm talking about this particular niche of security. I don't care about all this other stuff; it's not relevant. But where like a human would generally pick up based on the context of what you're talking about, generally what niche or what nuance you want. If you have any other questions for Natalia, now is your time to ask. We have to wrap up in about 4 or so minutes. Um, Thank you, Natalia, for doing that very impromptu walkthrough of Bedrock, which I don't think you was expecting whatsoever. But we adapt.
That's okay. So yep, I'll just bring back links in case somebody wants to kind of navigate to one of them. But yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Natalia, for coming on to the show again. I believe you was on at the very beginning of the year talking about Lambda jumpstarts, which is another pretty
Yep,
exciting tool. And yes, thank you to our viewers and everyone. It has been great. And with that, I will say, Mā te wā.